right, we are starting the final chapter in what officially is called Likutei Amarim, Tanya. In other words, we use the word Tanya for this entire book and loosely for the first section of the book. This book contains within it sub-books. And the first and most foundational, most significant, most studied is called Likutei Amarim, or as we call it, Tanya. And the Tanya has 53 chapters. And we are now starting chapter 53. And it has taken us many years to get here. I don't remember when we started this round. I don't know if any of you joined at the beginning, then maybe you can remember. I don't remember. Chapter 53. Now, to understand chapter 53, of course, let's remind yourself what we were discussing in chapter 52, which I thought was fascinating, powerful, and very practical in terms of a real appreciation for Torah. We are discussing creation. How does God's energy create? And we explained that, like in our body, God's energy first fills the whole skeletal structure of creation, but so intense that can't be read, can't be perceived by creation, and definitely creation can't flow from that. And then there's an enormous constriction of that infinite light, and it expresses itself, it implants itself in the will and wisdoms in the highest of the four spiritual worlds, the world of Atzilus, the world of being. And there it's perceivable on the level of will and wisdoms, those four highest levels, but on no other level. It's way too intense for any other level below the will and wisdoms to perceive that godliness. So then that infinite light again constricts itself far more intently and directly goes from that space of infinity to the lowest of the levels in the world of Atzilus and the world of being, the level that throughout the Tanya we're calling Shechina, which is a Talmudic term for that level, and which generally in the Hasidic lexicon and in Tanya we call Malchus, sovereignty. So sovereignty, Malchus, Shechina, is a 10th and final level of each spiritual world. Here we're talking about the highest world, the world of Atzilus. So the infinity of God invests itself in a very squashed manner in Malchus, in this lowest dimension, which is a dimension of God's creation. Malchus is a dimension of God's speech. God creates through speech. As we say in our reality, with 10 utterances, God created and keeps creating everything, not just our own physical reality. All of the spiritual realities are through God's speech. Well, that makes sense. That's through Malchus. Sovereignty is God's speech. God doesn't create by doing. He's not creating by thinking. He creates by speaking. Malchus, sovereignty, his speech. So here we have the infinity of God implanted in this lowest of the 10 dimensions, Malchus, sovereignty. And now creation is supposed to happen. But wait, it can't. Because the infinity of God within Malchus, within sovereignty, is way too powerful to create. Well, didn't it squash itself all the way into Malchus' lowest dimension? It did, and it's still way too powerful. It would overwhelm any creation. We said it's like the rays, the creation, trying to emerge when you're right by the sun. Well, when you're right by the sun, no rays can come forth. The rays come forth, I don't know how many thousands or probably more than thousands of miles away from planet sun. So we're right by the infinity of God in sovereignty and creation. It's the rays by the sun. Rays don't exist by the sun. So what do we need? So we said we need a filter. We need something that can filter the intensity of these rays. But we have a problem. Because any filter stronger than Malchus, well, it'll just add to the problem. There'll be even more strength to overwhelm creation and make it not happen. And if it's weaker, how will it work? It'll be also subsumed by the energy and it won't exist either. So impossible situation. No, God has a solution. The solution is let's go back to where God's infinity first implanted itself, in the will and wisdoms, because the will and wisdoms are expressed in Torah. Well, then Torah is so high and so much higher than sovereignty. So yeah, it's so higher, it won't get overwhelmed by it, but it will just overwhelm creation. So what's the solution? We said because Torah comes down to every level of creation. Torah starts way higher than sovereignty, Malchus of Atzilus, way higher, but she descends to be the Torah of the world of Atzilus. And then she descends and expresses herself as the Torah of the next spiritual world of Bria, and then of the next spiritual world of Yetzirah, and then of the next spiritual world of Asi, and then in our physical reality, the Torah comes down to each dimension of creation and is interacting with that level. So Torah, on one hand, is way higher than sovereignty, Malchus of Atzilus, of the world of being. So she's not going to get overwhelmed by it, but she's coming down to creation. She can interface with creation. She's going to be a filter so the energy, the infinity of God can flow through sovereignty, through Malchus, and then through the filter of the Torah, of the will and wisdom, and then creation can happen. We put up enough of a barrier that the rays can be even though the sun's right here. And that's what happens in the world of Atzilus. And then when creation happens. And then this Malchus of Atzilus descends to the next world, which is the world of Bria, where we said she is, in a certain almost peripheral way, within the Holy of Holies, what's in Hebrew called the Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies of the world of Bria, the Torah of Bria, which is the Torah of the Talmud, and then descends and really implants itself in Malchus of Bria. And then again, now that we have Malchus, the power of God's creation, filtered by the will and wisdom, the Torah, the reality of how Torah is in the world of Bria, Talmud, this can be a filter that creation of Bria can happen. And then the same thing happens in Yetzirah, and we spoke at length about the Torah of Yetzirah, Mishnah, Halacha, Jewish law, because Yetzirah is the world of emotion and Jewish law is God's emotions. This is what I love and I want you to do. This is what I hate and do not want you to do. I love, I hate, awe, fear, nullification, all of God's emotions are most clear in Jewish law, in Halacha, in Mishnah, the codification of the Jewish law, the Torah of the world of Yetzirah. So the Malchus of Atzilus, invested in the Malchus of Bria, is now peripherally going through the Holy of Holies, the Torah of Yetzirah, Mishnah, Jewish law, Halacha, invests itself in Malchus of Yetzirah, the sovereignty of Yetzirah, and then again, the sovereignty of Yetzirah, within which is the sovereignty of Bria, within which is the sovereignty of Atzilus, with the filter of the Torah of Yetzirah, Mishnah, Jewish law, now creation can take place in Yetzirah, and then the same thing happens in the next world. And this whole package deal peripherally goes through the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh Kodashim, the Torah of the world of Asiyah, of the final world, the world of descent, which we said is Mikra, is the verses of scriptures, Tanakh, and then invests itself, again, we know this, in Malchus of Asiyah, within which is Malchus of Yetzirah, within which is Malchus of Bria, within which is the Malchus of Atzilus, within which is the infinity of God, and with the filter of the Torah of Asiyah, Tanakh, scriptures, the very verses, creation takes place on Asiyah. And all that is in a completely spiritual reality of levels of godliness, more minimized and more minimized and more minimized, with all the creations happening. And as we said at the end of the chapter, we're speaking here very broad strokes. We make it sound like there are 4 levels. There are, I don't know, 400,000 levels, hundreds of thousands of levels, tens of hundreds of thousands of levels. And each level, we have the same process again and again and again. But all this is a spiritual reality. What we didn't discuss is, and what about us? What happens here on planet Earth? We can already understand the Holy of Holies probably has some significance because we've spoken all the 4 spiritual realities of a Holy of Holies, of the Torah of that world, of the will and wisdom of that world, and that was very significant. There was this synergy, right? Almost the dance between the Torah, the will and wisdom, and Malchus, God's creation, God's speech, and putting the two together, creation happens. So what happens in our physical world? That's what we're about to learn. And as we will discuss, in our physical world, we really have 3 stages. We have how godliness manifests itself in the times of the first temple, and then how the godliness manifests itself in the times of the second temple. Then, what happens now? How does the godliness manifest itself? So looking inside the chapter, this is so exciting. Our drum rolls are drumming away. Chapter 53. V'hine, kishahaya bayis rishon kayam. So now we're jumping from all the spiritual realities we discussed in the previous chapter at great length and detail. Spiritual is real. Spiritual is a reality, but it's a spiritual reality. Now we speak on our physical plane. So when we had the first temple, Shabo haya ha'aron v'haluchos v'veis kodesh kodashim. So in the first temple, there were a number of things that were not in the second. Not necessarily did we lose those things. Some of them were hidden because we're not on the same spiritual stature that we should directly benefit from those things. So one of those things that was not stolen, it was not taken by the Babylonians, it wasn't burnt in the fire. Way before the first temple was destroyed, already the priests took the ark, within which were the tablets, and took it to the underground tunnels that were built when the temple was first built to hide it until Mashiach. and we'll get it back again. But in the first temple, originally, we have a Holy of Holies, just like in every spiritual world, we have a Holy of Holies. Well, we obviously have a Holy of Holies in our physical reality. So what was in the Holy of Holies? So in the first temple, just to understand this a little bit, obviously, the temple wasn't where, casual, I think I want to go, let's go to a tourist attraction, the temple. No, not exactly. Well, I want to make a holy pilgrimage. I want to go to the temple. Okay, but you can only go so far. There's restrictions. If you're a regular Israel, how far you could go. If you're a Levite, if you're a priest, if you're a blemished priest, if you're a priest who right now it's your turn because they allocated according to weeks, your family's turn to serve. Many, many, many very legalized boundaries. Till here, not here, till here, not here. And then there was a most special place called the Holy of Holies that one person went into one day a year. So, in other words, it doesn't mean, well, every other day I could go into the holy. No, I could never go into the holy. I'm a woman, I'm not a priest, and I'm sure I have blemishes, besides being impure. But even for a male priest without blemishes, pure, who it was his family's turn to serve, he also couldn't stroll into the holies, only if he won the lottery that allowed him to serve. So this was always, only in the service, only if you won the lottery to serve, only if it's your family's turn to serve, a lot of restrictions. But that one place, nobody went into, besides the high priest, one day a year, on the holiest day, Yom Kippur, the holiest person, the high priest, went into the holiest place, the Holy of Holies of the temple. What was in the temple? What was in the temple was the ark, the ark, within which were the tablets, on top of which were the kerubim, the figures as if children with wings. That was it. And there, between the pillars, the staves of the ark, the presence of God was revealed. Now it's interesting, just a Mashiach note. Lubavitcher Rebbe says so many times that we have the complete revelation of Mashiach. We will all go dancing into the holy and dancing into the Holy of Holies, all of us, whenever we want, no restrictions. Does that mean we'll all be priests, or does that mean you don't have to be a priest? I don't know. Does that mean we won't have any blemishes? Probably not. Does that mean we'll all be pure? For sure. Does it mean it'll be open to every person? Every Jewish person. Every Jewish person will be on that level to go dancing into the holy and dancing into the Holy of Holies, as the Rebbe would say, many, many, many times. But originally, both in the first and second temple, the rules were quite different. And when the high priest went into the Holy of Holies, he went in with a string attached to his body because he was there to beseech God to forgive the sins of the Jews for the past year. And if his prayers were accepted, the red string turned white, and he left alive. And if something else happened, he would pass away in the Holy of Holies, and they weren't allowed to go in there, but through the string they would pull him out. So this was the place of the most enormous, intense holiness. Now, everything I've told you, many people know, more or less. What the Alter Rebbe is now going to unpack for us is what was really going on in the Holy of Holies. What energy was there, which is why one day a year, one person to bring atonement to the entire Jewish people. So the Rebbe explains. I'm just going to go back a little for the sentence to make sense. Shebo haya ha'aron v'haluchos beveis kodesh kedashim haisa hashchina. So in that Holy of Holies, where you had an ark, you had the tablets, you had the Shechina, you had the presence of God, as we've been saying, Malchus, Malchus of Atzilus, Malchus of Bria, Malchus of Yitzira, Malchus of Asiya, right? That term which we always start Tanya called Malchus, and in these chapters we keep calling it Shechina, because Shechina, as we explained, is the descent of God's energy from a higher plane to a lower plane to vivify. Shechina from the word shochen, a dwelling, an indwelling of a higher energy. Ultimately, the energy is the infinite energy of God himself, as invested in Malchus of Atzilus, the Malchus of Bria, the Malchus of Yitzira, the Malchus of Asiya. The infinite energy of God himself. That's what's invested within the Malchus. And let's see what's in the Holy of Holies in our physical reality. Shehi Malchus de Atzilos. Now, the term Shechina could mean any level of Malchus. It could be Malchus, sovereignty, on the highest world of Atzilus, the world of being, or on the next world, the world of Bria, the world of creation, or on the next world, the world of Yitzira, the world of formation, or on the next world, the world of Asiya, the world of descent. They're all called Shechina. Pharaoh says, no, I want to explain to you what's going on here. This is Malchus of Atzilus, she bechinas Giloi or Ein Sof Baruch Hu, which means the revelation of the infinity of God, Shoira Shom, is resting there. Umuveshes Baseres Hadibros, is engarbed within the 10 Commandments, those tablets. V'yeser Seis, V'yeser Ois, with more strength. Begiloi Rav V'atzum, with an enormous, intense essence revelation. Yoser Migiluya, more than she is revealed. Vehechalos Kait Kedashim Shalamayla V'ailmos El Yonim, more intently than any level of God's revelation in any of the Holy of Holies in all of the spiritual worlds. So the Rebbe here is saying something so unbelievable. But of course it makes so much sense if you understand the whole philosophy, Hasidic philosophy, how what God really wants, why he's doing everything he's doing is for this reality. Mashiach is here. All those spiritual worlds, no, they don't get Mashiach. This is the world of Mashiach. This is where God wants to be. In the physical, that's the most intense God energy. So therefore, the Holy of Holies on planet Earth, in a physical place, what we call Israel, what we call Jerusalem, Har Bayis, Har Moriah, in that very physical location, which both took up space and didn't take up space, God's energy was greater than in any spiritual reality. It's greater than the sovereignty of any of the spiritual worlds. It's greater than the Holy of Holies of any of the spiritual worlds. It is, as the Rebbe is going to say, Torah. I think to me, because I know some people could feel like, oh my gosh, there's so many I feel called technical details about spirituality, the technical side of spirituality. And what am I getting from this? I think one of the strongest things, if not the strongest thing we get from this, is the power and value of Torah. Torah is the force of creation. Torah is what allows creation to be. When I learn Torah, I'm one with the source. I'm one with the filter. I'm one with the ability for creation to be. And now the Rebbe is going to say, the Torah in our reality, on our physical planet Earth, Jerusalem reality, is the entirety of Torah. In a way that blows away, so to speak, the Torah in any of the spiritual realms. We have it. We've got the entirety of Torah in our hands, in our minds, our limited, finite human minds. We connect to Torah greater than any of the spiritual realities. Greater than the Holy of Holies of the highest spiritual world of Atzilus, of being. No, the Torah is more powerful. Now, there's two dimensions to this idea of the energy in our world, the Torah in our world, the energy in our world. There's the light of God herself, and there's how that light of God descends to be in our world. So what we're talking about here is the light of God. The light of God in the Torah, as it's found in the 10 Commandments, in the tablets, in the ark. Again, it's physical tablets, so to speak, in a physical ark, so to speak. I say so to speak because to understand how intense and enormous is the godliness and the Holy of Holies of the ark and of the tablets, they simultaneously took up space and did not take up space. If you measure the wall, you know the dimensions of the wall. I believe it was 10 amas, which is 15 feet. If you measured the ark, whatever it was, I don't remember, 2.5, I don't remember, whatever the dimension of the ark was, it took up space. You could measure it. It took up space. But if you measured both sides of that ark, that measurable ark, there were 5 amos on each side. The wall is 10 amos. The ark takes up space. I said maybe 2.5 amos, whatever it was, I don't remember. But then it's not taking up any space because on one side is 5 amos, on one side is 5 amos, and when I measure the entire world, I got 10 amos. So where's the ark? It's not taking up any space. But I measure it. It's not a spiritual reality I can put my hand through. It's not like some virtual image, 3D halogen. It's physical. It's substantial. It takes up space. It did both. It took up space, and it didn't take up any space at all. I can measure it. I can feel it. It's solid. It's wood. It's gold. It's physical. But I measure the wall. Got 10. Measure each side. 5 and 5. 10, 5 and 5. But there's something in the middle that's taking up space, and it's not taking any space. That level of God, which is called Kabbalistically Nimna HaNimnaos, the energy of the ultimate paradox. God is within, God is beyond, and it's both happening simultaneously by the same God. The same energy is within, the same energy is beyond. The same energy takes up space, which implies limitation. The same energy doesn't take up any space, which means beyond limitation. Limitation we understand. Beyond limitation we understand. But here, limitation and beyond limitation is the same energy. This is the highest expression of God. That was found in the physical chamber of the Holy of Holies on planet Earth, in Israel, in Jerusalem, on that mountaintop. There it was, this most intense energy, higher than any of the worlds, because Torah is here, and that energy comes from Torah. So that's the light itself. There's also how that light came down to our world. Now, how that light came down to our world, remember we said before, the infinity of God, and the sovereignty, Malchus of the highest world of Atzilus, which invests itself in Malchus of the world of Bria, the second world, which invests itself in Malchus of Yetzirah, the third world, which invests itself in Malchus of Asiya, the fourth world. So what's happening here? What's happening here is that light, which is bigger and more powerful than any light in any of the spiritual realities, is invested in Malchus of Atzilus, goes through Malchus of Atzilus, goes through Malchus of Bria, and then comes directly into our world. So it skips the whole world of Yetzirah and the whole world of Asiya, meaning the normative process of this infinity of God is package, 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 package. So if you got to the Malchus, the sovereignty of the world of Asiya, the final of the four spiritual worlds, the world of descent, the Malchus, sovereignty of that world, contains within it sovereignty of Yetzirah, the formation, the world before it, contains within it sovereignty of Bria, creation, the world before it, contains within it sovereignty of Atzilus, the world of being, the world before it, within which is the infinity of God. So we have the infinity of God within sovereignty of the world of Atzilus, covered by sovereignty of the world of Bria, covered by sovereignty of the world of Yetzirah, covered by sovereignty of the world of Asiya, and then that light extends through and goes through the filter of the Torah of Asiya, scriptures, and then creation can take place. But in our world, not only is the light beyond any light on any of those spiritual realities, including the holy of holies of the world of Atzilus, the highest spiritual reality, but the filters of that light are only the sovereignty of Atzilus and Bria. Circumventing the next two worlds, it comes directly into our world, within the tablets, the 10 Commandments, within the Ark, within the Holy of Holies. That's why one person, one day a year, went into that Holy of Holies. But the energy was there constantly. And that energy affected the world. And the world was on a very high level because of that. You know, it was a very spiritual reality. And the Jewish people were very holy. You know, sometimes when we read in the prophets, and the prophets are rebuking the Jews, and the prophets speak of the sins of the Jews. But if you learn it with the commentaries, the Jews were very holy. Yeah, the prophets are reprimanding because more is demanded of you. But they were very holy. The Jews in times of the temple, they understood. They understood God. They had a grasp of God. And they had developed emotions. They had real deal understanding and real deal awe and love of God. We, conversely, are sleepwalkers, sleep thinkers, sleep talkers, sleep feelers. meaning we're in a dream state. That's what it says. In exile, hayinu kechomen, we're dreamers. It's all a dream. So in a dream, your eyes are shut. You don't see a thing. In a dream, impossibilities coexist because nothing's really being processed through your mind in a coherent, logical way. So our minds and hearts, compared to the Jews in the times of the temple, we are viewed as sleepers, sleepwalkers, sleep talkers, through our dreams, like we're in such a fog. There's such a fog clouding our minds. There's such a fog clouding our hearts. It's so hard to really understand, to really feel. In the times of the temple, they were awake. They got it. They understood and they felt. Now, of course, we have spiritual advantages because we're in such a darkness and we're still holding on. And we have such a commitment to God and such a nullification to God. It makes no sense and we still keep doing it. We have the attribute, that's the attribute of victory, of commitment. When it really makes no sense and you still stick with it, that's very, very valuable. That's self-sacrifice. That's serving God irrationally, beyond reason. So we are all there in terms of, it doesn't make much sense. We're not very rational. We serve God without reason. We self-sacrifice for God. We nullify ourselves to God. We commit to God. We are creating Mashiach. So we are doing amazing things. But just to understand, in the times of the temple, the Jews were awake. And they understood. And they felt. And they weren't serving God as we do with this constant self-sacrifice, self-sacrifice, self-sacrifice. Why not? Because they saw. Because their eyes were open. We're the dreamers. Our eyes are shut. We don't see God. And therefore we don't understand. And therefore we don't feel. And therefore everything we do is self-sacrifice, which is very valuable and precious. But in the times of the temple, their eyes were open. They saw. They saw. They understood. They really felt. And what enabled them to have their eyes open and see and understand and feel for real? Because think of the enormous energy that was emanating from the Holy of Holies. An energy greater than in any spiritual reality. That was the energy on planet Earth for the duration of the first temple. 410 years. I feel so inspired thinking of Torah, and we have it, and it's so accessible. It's like the greatest treasure, and it's for free. You know? Turn on your internet, open up a book, study, learn, grab it. It's as accessible as I am going to dedicate time for it to be, as accessible as my commitment to it. You want more? Give it, take it more, grab it more. It's here for us, for every single one of us. You know, sometimes things that are like not so accessible, we value more. If something has a higher price tag, oh, well, this must be higher quality because it has such a price tag. So if you know something's expensive, by definition, you look at it differently. Torah is free. Torah was given in a desert, right? In a place that's no man's land, for your taking. And sometimes because of that, we could not even get how precious is this gift that God gave us. He gave us the Torah. He gave us himself. He literally gave us himself in the Torah. It's like I sometimes think about prayer, davening, and I'm like, imagine if God let us pray to him, I don't know, one day a year, like on your birthday. You know, praying as you're talking to God. You're going into the chambers of the King. Imagine if we were allowed one day a year to pray. Boy, would we prepare. Boy, would we value it. Boy, would every word be so meaningful. And God said, I don't want you to do it one day a year. I want you to do it 3 times a day. And we're like, it's hard to value it when it's 3 times a day. God said, so work on it. So value it. I want the relationship with you. I want it to be a real relationship. I want it to be day in, day out relationship. Talk to me 3 times a day and value it. And similarly with Torah. God's saying, no, I'm not making it inaccessible. I'm making it accessible. I'm making it yours for the taking. And in our generation, how much more than any generation before? I personally definitely own more books than many little shtetl in Europe. How accessible. And as I'm saying, if you need books, you can find so much online in whatever language you want. How accessible. And we have to understand. And in this super accessible, for my taking Torah, is God's energy higher than in any spiritual reality. So let's read this inside. So the Rebbe just told us that the intensity of the energy in the Holy of Holies is beyond any reality of God on any of the spiritual planes we've discussed throughout the entire chapter 52. Why? Kieseres hadibras. Because the tablets, the 10 Commandments, hen klolos haTorah kula. They are the entirety of the Torah. Dinafka migav chachma ilah. That comes, that emerges from the highest wisdom of God. De le'ela le'ela, which is far, far beyond me alma disgalia, from any level of revelation. So all the worlds have Torah, right? There's Torah on Atzilus, and Torah on Bria, and Torah on Yetzirah, and Torah on Asiya. But we got the real goods. We got the entirety of Torah that's emerging from a place, blowing away, so to speak, all of those 4 levels, what we call Seder Hishtalshalos, all of the Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya. Beyond all of that, that's where Torah is emerging from. And from that point, from the emergence of Torah, it came down, not to Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya. It came to us. Came to the 10 Commandments. It came to the tablets. It came to the ark. It came to the physical Holy of Holies in a physical structure, on a physical mountain, in a physical geographic spot in our physical world. So now that we spoke about the light, the intensity of the light of Torah that's beyond any spiritual reality, now the Rebbe is going to explain how that light came into this world, which I already said to you, was through Malchus of Atzilus and Bria, and that's it. Direct jump to our physical world. So to take this intense light, higher than any of the spiritual realities, and engarve it into the physical tablets, like that sentence doesn't even make sense, but that's what it is. Well, it couldn't go down through the normal progression. Like, in other words, normatively, any godliness in our world goes through all of Atzilus, and then all of Bria, and then all of Yetzirah, and then all of Asiya, and 3,600 levels later, it can trickle into our world. And of course, each level is minimization, 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 minimization to be able to get into our world. Didn't happen. This is way too intense to do any of that. This skipped the rules. This skipped the lines. So it didn't go level by level through all the normative progressions of worlds until our physical reality. Because our physical world is behaving according to an engarment in nature. In other words, normatively, godliness has to get this small because godliness isn't revealed in our world. Our world is teva, right? Teva means nature. The word nature also, interestingly enough, has the same etymology of drowned, like tuvu biyam. Because the godliness is like drowned within the physicality. It's so submerged. That's nature. Nature means concealment of God's energy. Now, of course, nature is God's energy. It's God's energy from his second greatest name, so to speak, Elohim. But that name in of itself is the gevura, is the restriction, is the restraint, is the withholding of God's energy. So when I look at nature, I have 2 choices. I could look at nature and be in awe of God. I could look at nature and dismiss God, right? We could look at nature and we could say, like, what are you getting so excited about? The Soviet Union collapsed. I don't know, maybe the soldiers all dropped their guns. They weren't being fed properly. They weren't being paid. They were disinterested. It happens. And someone could look and say, the evil empire collapsed without a protracted struggle at all? Maybe 3 days? God. Look at the same thing. Some people see God, and some people see nature. You look at the most magnificent, Niagara Falls, the power of nature. the power of God. So that's the test and the challenge of nature, where the godliness has been so minimized through all the worlds of Atzilus and all the worlds of Bria and all the worlds of Yetzirah and all the worlds of Asiya, that when it comes to our physical reality, we have to challenge God, nature, the sun. A spiritual person looks and says, the sun is such an expression of God's power. It's unbelievable. It's been this way for 5,785 years, and it's not tired at all. It's no weaker than when it started out. Like, this is unbelievable. This is expressing the infinity of God. And someone else looks and says, this is a planet. It's called the sun. So that's nature. So normatively in our world, for nature to be, and God wants nature to be, that's the significance and challenge of our world, the godliness has to get that minimized. Which is why it has to go through all of Atzilus, and then all of Bria, and then all of Yetzirah, and then all of Asiya, getting minimized, to get into our world. That's how our world operates. But that wouldn't work for Torah. Because Torah is beyond any of the realities. It's not minimized. The middle reading because this physical reality, this physical world, is engarbed within the engarments of physical nature. And within this physical nature, we have this insane synergy of something physical that's not physical at all. The tablets. The tablets are the handiwork of God. The writing, the engraving on the tablets, that's God. Totally beyond any reality of the physical nature. Meaning, as I said before, just like the ark took up space and didn't take up space, it's 10 amos, 15 feet across, which was 10 amos, and then you have this physical structure of the ark, and then you measure, and you got 5 and 5 amos and 5 amos on either side of the 10 amos wall, with the ark in between this taking up space and not taking up space. Right? So that's called Nimna HaNimnos. So similarly, even more intently, the tablets themselves. Are the tablets physical or not? They're both. They're physical. It's something you could, again, not that you did, you weren't privy because it's in the Holy of Holies, in the ark, and the high priest goes there once a year. But in theory, when Moses came down, the Jews people could see them. It was something they could see. And I'm not saying they touched them, but it's something that's touchable. It's a physical tablet. And it's not physical at all. As the sages say, that the writing was engraving. It wasn't like ink on parchment. It was carved out letters. Okay, we can have carved out letters. But they say it's very interesting because certain letters in the Hebrew are a complete circle, like the letter O in English. You have 2 such letters like that in the Hebrew alphabet. And they're in the 10 Commandments. So if you would take a piece of paper and cut out that O, so what happens? You pick up the paper and the circle in the middle falls out. And there you have that empty space. But in the tablets, it didn't work that way. It wasn't empty space. There was the letter carved out. And yet the inside, what would enable you to see the letter, still remained. Well, how is that? Because it's not physical. Because it's the writing of God, it's the tablets of God, but they're physical tablets, physical letters. And it's the writing of God and the tablets of God, and it's physical and not physical, and it's God and it's physical. It's the absolute synergy of both. Just like the ark takes up space and doesn't take up space, the tablets are physical. The tablets are the handiwork and writing of God himself. So that energy can't go through all of the 3,600 levels of the 4 worlds to get into our world. Yes, we understand this energy is higher than anything any of the spiritual worlds are experiencing. But still, if it went through all of these 4 worlds, there would be such an impact and constriction and minimization on that energy, it still wouldn't be. So therefore, it didn't happen. So therefore, we skipped the lines. We skip the minimizations of 2 entire worlds so that this energy could be. And the world could be as per that energy. As I'm saying, the Jewish people were. They were awake, not sleepwalkers, not sleep talkers, not sleep thinkers, not sleep feelers. They were awake, their eyes were open, they saw God, they understood God, they experienced God, they felt, they loved, they had awe. They were completely conscious because of the energy emanating from these tablets, from this ark, from the Holy of Holies to their world.